Nous sommes en guerre.
La Grande-Bretagne est en guerre avec l'Allemagne.
A tremendous battle is raging in France and Flanders. The Germans, by a remarkable combination of air bombing and
La région parisienne venant d'être mise en état d'alerte. Veuillez donc gagner sans hâte les abris qui vous ont été
À
indiqués.
partir
Votre personnel
d'aujourd'hui,
vous guidera.
la direction du gouvernement de la France. C'est le cœur serré que je vous dise aujourd'hui qu'il faut cesser le combat.
Let's begin the story in the summer of 1940, as Europe collapsed under German invasion. A single British ship carried more souls than it was ever designed to hold. Thousands of soldiers, airmen, refugees, and civilian evacuees desperate to escape France before Nazi forces arrived. But on the 17th of June, one of the greatest maritime disasters in British history unfolded. A catastrophe deadlier than the Titanic Lusitania, and even many wartime sinkings, yet the British public didn't hear a whisper of it, because the government issued an instant press blackout. Today, we pull open the curtain on the tragedy. London tried to bury the final voyage of RMS Lancastria. RMS Lancastria began life far from war. Launched in 1920, she was a proud, steel-ribbed ocean liner built for leisurely voyages across the Atlantic. A floating hotel forged in the quiet years after World War I, she sailed for Cunard, ferrying passengers between Britain and New York. Polished brass, mahogany interiors, soft carpets under steady footsteps, a world away from gunfire and invasion. But as Europe plunged into conflict again in 1939, Lancastria was requisitioned by the British government. Her luxurious rooms were stripped of finery, her decks reinforced, purpose transformed. She was no longer a cruise liner. She was now a troopship in a losing race against time. By June 1940, France was collapsing. The British Expeditionary Force had already been rescued from Dunkirk, but hundreds of thousands still remained scattered across French ports. They were trapped, and the Germans were closing in like a tightening fist. The mission to save them was called Operation Ariel, a chaotic, frantic evacuation, overshadowed by the glory of Dunkirk. The port of Saint-Nazaire became a bottleneck of fear. Vehicles abandoned, families separated, documents burning, soldiers boarding any vessel they could find. German aircraft circling overhead like dark omens into this chaos sailed the Lancastria, a ship built for about 2,200 passengers, now told she would take as many as humanly possible. Captain Rudolf Sharp protested. The number was unsafe. But orders were orders. Troops flooded aboard, pouring into cabins, corridors, stairwells, even cargo holds. Men clung to railings. Some sat on deck with nowhere else to stand. The final count was never known. Some estimates say 6,000, Others claim 9,000. No number feels small enough. By noon on June 17th, Lancastria was anchored just outside the harbor. The weather was calm. The sea looked almost indifferent. The ship waited for escort ships to arrive. Protection from the Luftwaffe that prowled the skies. But time was a luxury the refugees aboard did not possess. The Luftwaffe spotted the cluster of evacuation vessels. And then the first shadows passed overhead. Lancastria's decks stiffened. Voices fell quiet. Some men whispered prayers into their sleeves. Then came the sound, a long, rolling growl from above. German Junkers, 88 bombers. The sky broke open. Just after 3 p.m., the first bombs fell. Columns of water shot up around the ship, towering, white-gray explosions that rocked Lancastria from side to side. Then one bomb pierced the starboard side. A second slammed into the engine room. A third tore open a fuel tank. Black oil erupted across the water like ink spreading across a page. Inside the ship, steel buckled. Lights flickered out. Thousands were thrown against bulkheads and walls. Then a final bomb struck near hold number 3, the place where hundreds of men were packed shoulder to shoulder. The Lancastria shuddered violently. Her fate had been sealed. The order was never formal, but every man heard it in their bones. Abandon ship. But how does one abandon a ship with thousands aboard and only a handful of lifeboats still intact? The crew fought to release the boats, but many davits were warped, jammed, or struck by shrapnel. Men leapt into the sea in desperation. Some jumped from heights that broke bones on impact. Others simply stepped into the water, oil swirling around them in black ribbons. Those still inside the ship were trapped. Holds flooded. Staircases became waterfalls. Voices echoed through steel corridors. Calls for help that twisted into silence. And then the unthinkable. The slick of fuel surrounding the ship caught fire. The surface of the ocean burned. Survivors described it as a floating inferno, a burning carpet of black flames. Some swam beneath the fire to survive. Some didn't resurface. Above them, Lancastria rolled onto her side, exposing her red belly to the sky, like a wounded giant tipping over after the final blow. Then she slipped beneath the surface. It had taken less than 20 minutes. Thousands went with her. The water was thick with oil wreckage, and the desperate ships in the area raced to rescue survivors, trawlers, merchant vessels, fishing boats. Some hauled men aboard by the dozen. Others threw ropes, planks, anything that floated. Eyewitnesses later described seeing rows of bodies lined across the water, like a terrible tapestry stretched from horizon to horizon. It was one of the most horrific scenes of the Second World War, and the world was about to be told nothing. News of the sinking reached Prime Minister Winston Churchill immediately. His response was a single sentence. The newspapers are not to mention the sinking. The order was absolute. Britain was in a fragile state. Morale had already been shaken by the loss of France. Revealing that thousands more had died during an evacuation could have broken public confidence. So the tragedy was buried. Families received vague telegrams. Missing. Lost at sea. Unaccounted for. But not the truth. Not yet. It wasn't until 5 weeks later that the world finally heard of it. And only because an American journalist broke the silence. By then, bodies were still washing ashore in France. Some were buried in mass graves. Others, never identified. To this day, the exact death toll remains unknown. The estimates range from 3,000 to over 5,000, possibly the worst maritime loss in British history. Yet the full official file on the Lancastria remains sealed. Some documents won't be released until 2040. Why? Because even now, the truth may cut deeper than we know. The sinking of the Lancastria is more than a wartime tragedy. It's a reminder of the cost of secrecy, of the lives caught between military necessity and human vulnerability. Thousands of ordinary men boarded a ship meant to save them. Instead, they became a chapter the world was never meant to read. But history doesn't stay buried forever. And today, by telling their story, we give back what was once taken. Recognition, memory, truth. The Lancastria may have sunk beneath the waters off France, but the voices it carried will never be silenced again. Thank you for watching. If you want more deep dives into disasters, near misses, and the truth behind most shocking moments, hit subscribe. And join me for the next episode of Crash and Shocks. Stay curious, stay aware, and I'll see you in the next one.